Taken my bows and my curtain calls. You brought me fame and fortune and everything that goes with it. I thank you all, but it's been no bed of roses, no pleasure cruise. I consider it a challenge before the whole human race, and I ain't gonna lose. Champions, my friends, and we'll keep on fighting till the end. We are the champions. We are the champions. No time for losers, 'cause we are the champions of the world, the champions, my friends, and we'll keep on fighting till the end. Oh, we are the champions.
What's up, my people? We're back on the Knuckleball Primetime, and we're back in the great St. Francis County with the state title in hand with Coach Schweiz, too. As the Central Rebels, they went to Columbia. They took care of business, and they are the first time ever state champions. So glad to have you here, Coach Schweiz. Going to have a little season wrap up and sit down. And congrats, man.
Thanks, DJ. I appreciate it.
How's it feel? How's it feel just to get the long season over with and have it accomplished?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's a week gone by already, and it's back to normal. So, but I tell you what, it was really cool coming back into town that night and seeing the community there in Park Hills. Fill up Main Street, and I think we're doing a ring ceremony Tuesday night at the basketball game, or not a ring ceremony, but I think we're giving out their medals Tuesday at the basketball game. So that'll be really cool. I'm looking forward to that. I haven't got to see. Really, it was kind of a weird deal. I haven't really got to talk to all the guys since the football game's been over. I know that sounds crazy, but
Most went to basketball, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. I mean, those guys have already played 4 basketball games since football season was over, and we just got finished last weekend. So, and they've already won a tournament. So, kudos to those guys. I know they had to be worn down, and for those basketball players to go out and do what they did this week was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a great time, and I was gonna tell you, I saw you take a picture of the crowd at the game. How was that, seeing how packed we came out to the game?
Yeah, I tell you, I was able to do some things that I probably wouldn't have been able to do as a young coach. I was really kind of, I've talked to people and they said just really try to soak it in, enjoy it. And I did, man. I went into the locker room there at Mizzou, and I was looking at all the guys that we played against, their lockers and stuff, and kind of soaked all that in. And then I went out on the field, and I didn't watch us warm up. I watch us warm up all the time, so I didn't really watch us warm up that much. I just kind of was taking in the surroundings and our crowd and seeing everybody that was out there. I did take a few pictures from the field out to the crowd just for my own personal self, and I saw my wife and my family out there, my mom and dad, and I wanted to make sure I got a picture of them from the field. So that was all cool. I tried to soak as much of it in as I could before the game, because I knew once the game started, it'd be back to business.
For sure. So was it any jitters before the game, like just going up to the coin toss and kind of after kickoff just settled in? Because I knew we were going to come out striking. I knew we were going to do Central things, but how'd you kind of just get yourself settled in, like outside of the moment,
It really, oddly enough, I didn't have that many nerves or jitters. I didn't sense that from our kids either. So it was kind of cool. We got there early enough to where we had to take our team picture or whatever, and kind of got the going into the locker room thing out of the way, before it really, we had a lot of time to do that. So it wasn't like, by the time all that stuff was over, we still had about the same amount of time we would for a normal game. And I think, once we started doing our normal pregame stuff, I think everything was pretty normal. Like I said, I never really felt a whole lot of nerves, really at any point, which, people probably think I'm crazy, but I really didn't.
The picture I saw you and Coach Jones take, and just how is this, like, how do you and the coaches celebrate, like, just like long long times coming, you know, like you, Coach Jones, and Coach Ahold especially, like just sit and just think about all the years?
Well, you know, it was a little surreal. Coach Jones and I have been through a lot. Coach Ahold, you know, even longer. But, Coach Jones and I have had a lot of just talks over the years. Not really during football season, a lot of them during football season, some of them outside of football season, just 365 days a year, just so many talks about the what ifs and, the private public thing and, didn't know if it would ever happen kind of thing. And, so it was nice when it was all over and we knew we won. That hug that PJ and I had was pretty special because, just all those conversations that we've had over the years, just not knowing if we'd ever get to the mountaintop and knowing that we had gotten there and that, the kids had done it for us was pretty special. And, I was able to celebrate it with all my assistants, which most, like you said, like most of them were former players that were trying to get there as well. So that was all really special. And I think that will always be special. That was probably the most special thing about the whole thing.
Yeah, it was a great time just seeing you guys hug and all of it come together. Because Coach Jones actually went there and Chad was a part of it and didn't get it done, but seeing Jackson get it done and just seeing Coach Jones be able to be a part of that, it was like a full circle moment. Like it was really cool to see, and just Coach Jones being a big old guy after the game. He was just looking up, where's my daughter at? Like it was just like he's a big bear, So seeing it all come together, all the hard work and stuff, it's just really cool, and it makes the players feel good inside because you guys go hard for us, and like I said, we'd run through a wall for both of you, so it feels good.
Yeah, I know, and I like I said, I think knowing that we've had a lot of really close encounters and never were able to do it. It was special, not just for us that were on the field that day, but I felt like it was special for the community and all the former Rebels that we've had. Because like I said, I've gotten a lot of text over the previous week leading up to the game, really previous couple weeks leading up to the last two games. And everybody kind of said the same thing you're talking about. We knew we weren't just playing this for us. Yep. It was for all the former Rebels that played before us, all those teams that, had to battle adversity just like this team did, in a different way. The adversity that we had to face in those years past was just going up against teams that had all those Power 5 dudes. And this team had to face a different type of adversity, and it's all the same, though. So when you're living it, playing as a player like PJ and I had done, it was just surreal. It was just a lot different.
How so it was I feel like it was two similar weeks coming down to getting the state title. Big leads at half that came down to almost one score games. So how did that feel within just being a coach and I would say, competing with yourself and what you're going to do within the team?
Well, I tell you, those two games were really eerily similar, honestly. We knew that both of those teams were really good teams. We thought it was very important to get off to a fast start, big start. We took the ball offensively. You played for me. We always like to defer. But our strength this year was offense. I thought defensively we got a lot better as the year went on. But overall offensive football is a lot different than it used to be. I mean, teams have just gotten a lot better with the offenses that they run. So it's a lot harder to stop teams defensively.
For sure.
So we thought it was important that if we could get out in front and play with a lead, that would play to our strength and hopefully force the two teams in Blair Oaks and Seneca to maybe throw the ball a little bit more than they wanted to, feeling like they need to catch up. And that was kind of why we took the ball to start. And it actually worked out because we were able to, in both games, go down and score quickly, and continue to score quickly in the first half and create those big leads. Now, it didn't create what we thought it would. I mean, both of those teams were able to stick to their game plan for a lot of it. Seneca actually did kind of go off script a little bit and threw like a halfback pass or whatever and kind of caught us, which shouldn't happen, but it did.
Was that the one for the touchdown?
Yeah. The one play drive kind of hurt us there, but but still, we got them to do things that they weren't accustomed to doing, which was kind of our game plan.
They were uncomfortable throwing the ball.
Yeah, and we thought that if we could get either one of those teams to throw the ball more than run the ball, we'd have a good shot at winning.
Would you say that What was the harder test? Like, would you say that? So people would say that, I was, the eye test. You do that as football. Like, you just do the eye test. Like, I think that Blair Oaks would have beat Seneca. But I feel like both teams are coached differently. But, we just brought a test. Like, no one's seen the Central Rebels. So, like, once they seen them, they were like, all right, we're going to have to play some football differently, to where, like, I just felt like it was different. We weren't ranked. Were we not ranked coming into the season?
Well, we were ranked early, but once we had those 3 losses, we were out. But, that goes to show the rankings. They don't take into account, injuries and things that happen. So, once we lost those 3 games, we knew we were going to be out of the rankings. But really, none of that matters because you're still going to have to beat the teams whether you're ranked or not. So,
and how does it work after like a state win? Like, do they just want you to win and get out of Class 3, or do you got to, like, it's our first time, so how does things like that work? People that don't know.
Yeah, so we're good. I mean, since we're a public school, that none of that will change. I mean, if we go to Class 4, it would be because of enrollment, not because we won.
Okay.
The success thing, bumping classes and stuff, only affects the private schools. So that's not going to be a thing. Blair Oaks and Seneca, both public schools. So I'd imagine all of us will be back in Class 3 next year.
For sure. It was definitely a fun season to watch. What's the future for Coach Schweiz? Like, I know you can't teach forever and coach forever. Like, how long? What do you got in, like, mind?
I don't know. I mean, I've been asked this for probably the last 4 or 5 years.
And we don't want you rushing anything.
No, I still enjoy it. Obviously, I've got a kid that's a freshman. I've got a kid that's in 6th grade. I don't know. I don't think I can coach long enough to coach those guys, but I'm not going to sit here and say that next year is my last year. I do know that I will coach at least one more year. I will coach next year for sure, and then I kind of play it by year after that. I think
is it that you don't enjoy it, or you just got to let new things start?
No, I think it's just that I just don't have the energy. Like, it takes a lot of time and effort, and when you play until December, and the last few years playing until mid-November, like, a lot of people don't understand. Like, you coach other fall sports and they play their state championships in like the first week in November. You play in a state championship in football and you play December. Like, it's a whole nother month. You add that up every year. We've been playing in a lot of district championships over the last 10 years. It's hard to imagine those teams like Valley Catholic and Lamar and those teams that play in the state championship every year. I mean, it's football 365 for those teams because they're getting done in December and you're starting back up after Christmas. So, for us, it's just a lot of time and a lot of commitment and that's time away from your family. It's time away from your wife. And Angie's been a trooper through it all. She's been there the whole time, but I know it gets old for her. We had some issues with our house during the football season this year with the little water in the basement, and
you couldn't be there for?
Yeah, well, I told her, I said, I'll have to do that after football season's over. So, and then football season really never ends, so it's like that still needs to be done today. So, and then she was wanting me to do that today, and here I am here. So it's just one of those things that, like, football really never ends. And then you get to the off season and you start thinking about what you got to do for next year. So your brain never stops. And I think it's as much mental as it is physical. I think, you lay in bed at night during the season and you can't sleep because you're thinking about stuff. And then in the off season, you think it's all over and you can breathe and take it easy. And I will for a couple of weeks, but it won't be long. And then all of a sudden it starts back up and you're thinking, okay, now these guys are gone. Who do we replace them with? What kind of offense can we run? You start thinking about all that stuff. And it's like, well, how can we implement that? I mean, it's nonstop. So I look forward to the day when I don't have to think about it. I like the game of football. I love watching it. I love the X's and O's part of it. But for me, the best part about it's the relationship. If I could just do the relationship part of it and not worry about, like, the thinking all the time about the X's and O's and how to put our kids in the best position, I think I would be able to do it forever. But that other part, it kind of wears on you. And the game has evolved so much that if you don't keep up with how the game's changing, you're lost. And then you can't really compete, and then you can't if you're not winning, it's harder to make the relationships. I know you can, but it's harder. I mean, everybody wants to win, and when you're winning, everybody's happy, and when everybody's happy, it's easy to have relationships and all that stuff. It kind of goes hand in hand, but you know, I don't know. To answer your question, I have no clue how much longer I'll do it.
What's the hardest thing about coaching? Like, especially like when like you're winning and it's just situations and you just got multiple coaches. Like, you're trying to hear multiple things. So I was just like outsider looking in and just being the guy that knows football and knowing the central system, that, you know, what goes on. When we had I think we were up 12 maybe, or we were up 11 maybe, but we were on our own 35 or 30, and we came out, we threw the pass to Job. This is against Seneca too. We threw the pass to Job over the top, and then I think we threw 3 passes. Then we called a timeout, out of timeouts, right?
Yep.
And then, so what was going on through that?
Okay, so I can relive that because it's like, I mean, it's whatever. But so we come out, we had a running play called, and that was one of the few times that Seneca actually, instead of playing with 2 safeties, only had 1 safety.
What was? Do you know the score? Do you remember the score?
Yeah, it was a 2-possession game, and I knew we had to run the ball and try to run some time off the clock, get some first downs, and we could probably win the game. I don't remember the exact score. It's probably 40.
It was 11. I want to say 11 or 12.
Yeah, something like that. I know it was 2 scores. Anyway, we come out. I had a running play called. Coach Calvert talks to me in the headset, and he's like, hey, there's nobody over Job.
They were one-on-one all day.
You know, when there's nobody over Job, I mean, you almost got to take your chance because you feel good about it. The kid made a tremendous – so we checked out of the run and went to the pass, and the kid made a tremendous play on the ball. And that put us in second down. Then I was going to run at this point, Kaysen had already been kind of banged up on a previous series. The previous series to this, I think Kaysen kind of had a bad ankle or something with his leg. I knew he wasn't 100%. So to run the ball, it was going to have to be one of our receivers.
In the motion
stuff. I had tried to get Jackson out of the game. I was yelling for Barrett. Barrett was...
Because of shoulder?
Well, and Barrett was, I guess, too far away for me to hear, and we were all yelling for Barrett, so I had to use a timeout. I was not happy about that because that was our last timeout. So anyway, that was a personnel issue there, and then you know, we went back in, and then I decided we were going to throw I wanted to run the ball, obviously, but I thought, well, we can run one of our wide receiver screens because that's 100%. I mean, we throw wide receiver screens all the time, and those are with Case and our guys. That's 100% completion. It's just like another way to run the ball for us. So I thought it was a safe way to basically run the ball, in quotation marks, run the ball. And then for whatever reason, the ball kind of fluttered out of Kaysen's hands, and Job didn't catch it, and it was an incomplete pass, and the clock stopped. So then it's like, now it's 3rd and 10, and like, you don't want to run the ball.
It's been 15 seconds.
Yeah, 15 seconds. And you don't want to run the ball and punt, you know what I mean? And you feel good about converting on 4th down. So actually, I take that back. The timeout was after that play, because then we talked about it, and the guys were telling me in the timeout that said that they're running they think they might run zone, which they didn't do very much of, but they had done it a couple times in the game.
As in like the over top coverage?
Well, no, they were actually going to play a zone defense. They had been playing man the entire game with some guys over the top, but the kids were telling me that they thought they were going to be playing zone because they saw some kind of call that they were making. So I made 2 calls in the timeout, one if they were in zone and one if they were in man. And then they come out and they were playing man, and we ran the zone play for some reason. I don't know. I haven't really talked to the guys about it. I don't know why we ended up running a play we call Hawk, which is really the play a play that was designed to run against zone, where we thought we could get buried to curl for the first down. Anyway, they were in man, and that's not really a good route against man. So anyway, it is what it is. We threw the incomplete pass and had to punt. So that was probably out of that last game for sure. That was the worst offensive possession, worst possible scenario of an offensive possession in that particular spot. But that's the ins and outs of it that people don't know. You know, they just see we throw the ball 3 times. In reality, we had a run play called. We had the one-on-one with Job. Second one, we throw the wide receiver screen, which I think is a 100% completion ball, and we happen to throw it incomplete, and then obviously
You just got to live with it.
yeah, and it's just part of it, man. It doesn't the game of football. It doesn't always go the way you want. You sit there and watch a game on TV, and you're thinking, why are they doing that all the time? And we don't know. Like we just don't know what is happening and what's in the heads of the coaches and what's in the heads of the players. But that's what makes sports fun. You know what I mean? You just don't know.
Yeah, and you're just being a fan, but it's fun when you're a player. You're just thinking about everything that could be going on and, scheme that's going on with injury and all that. So it's just really cool to see. And people that don't know, like, schematics and all that, like, yeah, it's just so what Coach Schweiss just explained, like, he wants to get his athletes the balls at all times, especially if they're manned up.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
makes sense.
That's what you do. You just try to get the ball in people's hands, and you still try to do what you're supposed to do with the clock management type
Coach
stuff.
Schweiss in 2012 though would have I formation, run the ball. That's all you would have done. You would have wasted about 12 minutes. You've grown. The playbook has grown tremendously.
Well, it has. I mean, I tell you, you looking back at some of those teams we had back then, and we could have, if we had ran this type of offense, it would have been pretty scary. Especially when we had Jake. Jake did run the spread, but it wasn't like we.
So let's talk about that. Jake and Kaysen. Like, what's different between the two?
One's right-handed, one's left-handed.
Well, yeah, that, but like the game, I don't think there's much.
There's not much, and people, my kids, I don't argue because I say they're 1 and 1A. My kids are like, there's no way, and people forget how good Jake was. People forget.
I had to go turn the huddle on. It was crazy who he was throwing to.
That's what I mean. That people forget how good Jake was, and people also he didn't have. And I'm not taking away anybody. Jake's junior year, he had, he had Braden and Hunter on the. He had some good receivers his junior year. His senior year,
both had 1,000. Yeah,
and his senior year, I'm not taking anything away from the guys that he played with, but he didn't have the caliber of guys across the board like Kaysen did. And his sophomore year, when you were still playing, we had a pretty good group of guys. But he wasn't.
He wasn't rolling yet.
Well, he wasn't the quarter. And I could have put him in as a sophomore and changed our whole offense, but I didn't think Hunter really had done anything to lose the team. We were undefeated. We were undefeated. We were winning every game, and we just played a different style back then. So it was kind of different. But yeah, I tell Slade and Ty all the time when they talk to me, I'm like, I don't know, man. Jake did the same stuff that Kaysen does. He did. He extended plays the same way he did. He ran hard. He lowered his shoulder. He did. He got tough yards running the ball when he had to.
He ran tough.
He made throws like Kaysen
One
did.
interception is insane. This man threw one interception this year.
Yeah, and I'd say that was probably the biggest thing. Is I don't think Kaysen ever really put. He took care of the ball so well. Like, he never fumbled or threw interceptions. And I think from an offensive coach, and a coach that knows what it takes to win football games, like, if you do not turn the ball over and you're a pretty good team, you will win most of the time. And that's why we won every game that Kaysen played, is because we took care of the ball. Now, Job did a fantastic job when he was in there in those games that Kaysen wasn't. But we as a team turned the ball over in those games, and those turnovers were the difference of the games. And that's the thing. Kaysen just took such good care of the football.
I wasn't there, but how would you stamp that game of Joe Bryant throwing for 400?
It was. He was just him being him. Like, it was crazy. And you think about it. Cannon was playing with 1 foot that game. I think it was a Valley game, right? When he threw for 400, and he did that against a state championship caliber team, with him not being a receiver to throw to and Cannon being on one leg. So how he did that, I still don't know if I really totally understand that. But it just kind of goes to show you, though, how deep we were at the receiver position, because without him to throw it to and Cannon being on 1 foot,
Braden Berry had to step up.
Braden Berry stepped up. Barrett Henson had some catches in that game. Jackson had some catches in that game. And Caden Casey, I think he was the biggest snub. I just got back from the All-State meeting the other day, yesterday, I guess, and Caden Casey got snubbed.
He got snubbed?
Yeah. He was a...
he had a great playoff run.
Well, great playoff run, and the other thing people don't understand is, there were some dudes in our class that had some ridiculous receiving stats. Cannon had 1,400, Job had 1,100. When he played 4 games at quarterback, he still had 1,100 receiving yards. And then, there were other guys in the state with 1,400 receiving yards, 1,200 receiving yards. So there were a lot of guys, and I knew it would be hard, but when Caden's your third option and he had 900 yards, I think it almost speaks volumes that, he's your third guy and he's got 900. I think that's more impressive than somebody that is the only option on a team that has to get it every time they throw it to have 1,100 yards. So, and Caden, I thought, made some unbelievable catches down the stretch. And I thought for sure, he would be an all-state guy. And, leaving the meeting, I was disappointed with 2 things in that meeting. And one was I was disappointed that Caden did not make it. I thought he was deserving. And the second thing, I thought Jackson Jones should have been the Defensive Player of the Year. And he didn't get that. And, everybody else kind of got at least recognized. The linebacker from Blair Oaks, number 15. You probably didn't notice him against us because he didn't do much.
He didn't do much.
Quiet
game.
Well, it was quiet. He is a stud. He's a real good player. I think he's going to play at Air Force.
How many tackles?
Against
on the season,
he had like 130-something tackles, where Jackson had 170-something. So I thought Jackson should get it, considering we won the state championship. Andy had 40 more tackles, and when we played each other head-to-head, Jackson had 17 tackles to his 4 or 5 or whatever it was.
Held the defense down. He had a big strip in that game too that people probably didn't see because it was just like weird. But when he did that was a game changer in that Blair Oaks game.
Well, I thought honestly when that happened in the Blair Oaks game, I thought that was one of the about 7 times I thought we got this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and then we never had it. But people don't realize we had I think we had a 3-score lead in the fourth quarter. Maybe 2. Maybe they had just scored right before the fourth quarter started. But we scored a touchdown and got a turnover in the fourth quarter, and they still had a chance at the end.
We scored when the fourth quarter started.
Yeah, the first play. Well, we had scored. I don't remember. It was in the fourth quarter. I know we scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter and had a turnover in the fourth quarter, and still they almost had a chance.
That was a long fourth quarter. I was on the radio, and I just like – my play-by-play just started getting kind of quiet because I was like getting into the game. I was like, I'm just quiet. Like, I was just like, I don't know what's going on.
You talk about the Seneca drive where we had a 3-and-out and only used 30 seconds or whatever it was. There was a possession like that in the Blair Oaks game too in the fourth quarter. So both of those games are so eerily similar. And, like when that happened in the Blair Oaks game, I don't remember what happened on the first play or what we called on the first play, but I remember it being like I thought it was 100% completion ball, and it wasn't. Kind of like the screen pass I alluded to earlier.
I think that was the one, and Job got caught up in the backfield, and they almost called a fumble.
I don't remember exactly, but then that one the clock would have ran, so it wasn't that one. It was one that we actually threw an incomplete pass on. And then the second down play, I called a little gap route to Caden, which I knew would be wide open.
Oh, yeah,
I
remember that.
Wanted to get a first down, and that was one of the few drops that we had, down at any point during the playoff run. And, we catch that, it's a first down, and then we get the clock, and then we probably were able to eat some clock. And then, so now we're 3rd and 10, and then we have to throw it again, So it was just one of those deals. Both games were so eerily similar, where we had the big leads. We had one just really horrible drive. And I will take the blame on them because I was throwing the football. But again, I trust my guys. When you're calling plays and you're thinking about running the clock out, I can't tell you how many times I've sat in my living room on a Saturday or Sunday when teams have to run the ball and they run the ball and it never works because they run the ball, punt, something happens, and they end up losing. It's like, dude, why don't you be aggressive? So that's why, the last time we had the ball against Blair Oaks, I didn't care. I wanted a first down. I knew we had it. And I just told Kaysen, I said, here's the deal. You trust your guys. You're like, okay, I'm going to call a pass here, but it has to be complete. Like, it's got to be 100%. If it's not, you run it. Okay, so I'm calling a pass play with the idea that I've got Kaysen at quarterback, and he's very intelligent, that he's either going to throw it and it's going to be complete, or he's going to run it. Like, I'm not going to run a designed running play and run into the teeth of the defense and knowing that I'm not going to get any yards and have to give the ball back to him. I'm going to try to put us in a play where, yes, we are going to run the ball maybe, or throw the ball, but the clock's going to run, and you just trust your guys. And a couple of those drives, it didn't work, and it's not their fault it didn't work. It just, sometimes that happens. But you put your trust in your players, especially when you got the players that we have.
Who would you give the All Heart Award to on the team this year? Some guy that probably like no one saw, or like they probably saw but really didn't see, but was a big part of the Central team this year.
I think Nathan Weinhold. I think he was the guy. I had everybody probably saw our district champion shirts with the Trust the Process on the back. When we lost our third game in a row after week 6, I guess it was to Valley Catholic.
I know you're head scratching.
And I was going into the locker room after all my radio interviews, and Nathan was sitting outside, and he was just I could tell he was visibly upset, emotionally, and so I sat down and I talked to him before I even went in and talked to anybody else, and I just told him, I was like, Nathan, the good thing is we're going to get guys back. This is not the version of us that we will play with down the stretch. Everything that we want to play for is still in front of us. I was like, you're just going to have to trust us, trust the process. We will right the ship, and everything's going to be fine. I just, in consoling him, I was almost consoling myself because I had to believe that too. You know what I mean? Like we hadn't lost 3 games in a season in a long time. We haven't lost 3 games in a row, probably, I don't know, since mid-2000s, 2009, 2008. I don't know when the last time was. We lost 3 games in a row. So our heads, and not just the players, but the coaches, everybody was kind of in a spot right then, like, what the heck's going on? Now, we all knew that we were good, and we all knew that was a 3-game stretch where we played 3 pretty good teams. But if we were 100% healthy, we're not losing those games. We're not losing for sure. We knew we would beat Cape and St. John. And the Valley game was one of those games where we thought if we're healthy, we're going to beat Valley. And I think the people I talked to from St. John after we played them last year and had the guys we had coming back all thought that we would be favored in that football game. But it'd be a fun game,
For sure.
And just playing those games without our guys.
That's what you look forward to.
Yeah, playing those games without our guys was discouraging, disappointing, all the words that you can think of. But I do think that all that adversity that we faced during that 3-game stretch made us better down the stretch. And I'm a big believer in God, and I think everything happens for a reason, and I think it was all part of the plan.
No, I do too. And I remember I couldn't make them, but like Will Job's brother was just calling me. He was just like, it's saying everything over the phone. I was just like visiting. I'm like, yeah, we needed them losses like early in the season, because it teaches you how to lose too,
Yeah,
I want to feel it again.
I think you have to know. I mean, sports is a lesson. It teaches you lessons. I think it's the biggest. I'm an educator, but I also believe that sports is the best educational tool. Maybe because I'm a coach, but because you get to teach them things that you can't teach them in a classroom. And one of those things is you need to know how to lose, and you need to know how to you need to know how to be a good sport in losing, because it's easy to be a good sport when you win. I mean, everybody's happy, but when you lose, it is not easy to be a good sport. We see it. I see it. A lot of the teams we beat, I see it. Like, their coaches are different after we beat them than they are before the game or they are the next day. They're just different right after we beat them, and the kids can see that. And that's one of the things as an older coach, I hope that coaches that play us when we lose, they don't see me as being different after the game than I am before the game or the next day. I feel like I'm the same all the time. And I feel like I have to be like that to show our kids how to lose respectfully. I mean, you got to give the other team credit when you lose. I mean, either you lost the game because stuff you didn't do well, or the other team beat you because they're better. But either way, it is part of the process. And
you set the tone too, because we all know how Cannon is and what kind of tone he brings, but what he was setting, but what kind of the tone he was setting before the game. I liked how you kind of settled that and like, no, we're not that kind of team. Hey, step off. We're this kind of team. We're coming to play respectful football. This is what we're going to do and stuff. Like, you always taught that, like, hit a man, help him up and stuff like that. Like, we just know how to respect the game and respect all that comes with it.
I think there's one way to play the game, and I think you do it respectfully. I think we play a game that is physical in nature, but that does not mean you have to be a headhunter and want to hurt the other team. Like, I think you go out there and you play you're hard. I want you to hit them hard because that's what it takes to win the game. But you don't do it with intent. You don't do it with anything like that. You help them up. You know, you do all the things that show good sportsmanship before the game, during the game, and after the game. And I think, you know, and let God take care of the rest. But the deal with Cannon was tough. I mean, you know, I love that kid.
Yeah, he's a great
I love
kid.
him, and he does like to talk a little bit. And you know, there's a fine line there. And you know, and I will give our guys, their guys wouldn't shake our hands, and I thought
they set that tone.
So their captains would not shake our captains' hands, and I thought that was very unsportsmanlike. But at the same time, our captains handled that really well, except for Cannon. Cannon didn't like it, and no, I don't think any of them liked it. But Cannon didn't like it, and he started mouthing them. Well, the refs are right there, you know. So what are you showing when you're letting your kid mouth? Because the thing that we preach all the time, you remember this. The thing we preach all the time is you cannot fall into the trap of you know, reacting to the other team.
Yeah.
Like you can't they always catch the second guy. They never catch the first guy. So if other teams doing something to try to persuade you to do something that you're going to get flagged for, and then we get flagged for it, I'm going to be the most upset person in the room for sure. and Cannon knew that. So as soon as that was happening, the fact that they didn't shake hands, that wasn't going to get the refs anything. But when we start mouthing about it, that's what they're, you know. So I didn't want.
So you go up there and you just look at it. You don't say really anything. Just kind of.
At first, I didn't say anything until he started saying. I think he said something to the effect of, "All right, if that's the way you want to play," or something like that. And I was, you know, and then he kind of backed him off. I kind of backed him off. And then I shook hands with the coach, and they dismiss us first. And then the captains do the coin toss. So I got dismissed. And when I got dismissed, Cannon said something again. I don't even know what he said. But at that point, I was like, okay, I don't, not that I don't trust him, but I wasn't going to be out there anymore. So I was like, all right, he needs to go now. And then I put Nathan in it. We have 5 captains, so it was easy because I could just put Nathan out there anyway.